today we are going to discuss equivalent fractions and decimals. What you've been working on the last couple days is going to be important to today. Let's read the first problem they give us. Daniel spent a day hiking to a wildlife preserve. During the first hour of the hike, he drank 6/10 liters of water. How many hundredths of a liter did he drink? There's your question. How many hundredths of a liter did he drink? And what number am I using here to help me out? Cheyenne? 6/10. Now, there's a question over here on the right that says, how can you represent hundredths? How have we been representing our decimals here? How do we write them? What are the ways we've written them, Valeries? And what do we call that? A decimal. So that's one way we have done it. What else? Get it in? Fractions. So we have used fractions as well as decimals. So you could say in a fraction or decimal. We've been doing both. Alright, as you can see, this first way we're going to write 6/10 as an equivalent fraction with the denominator of 100. So they drew a model of tenths. They also drew a model of hundredths. Yes? So if you have 6/10, how many of these am I shading? 6 of these rectangles. If you look over here at the record section to the right, before we shade ours for the hundredths, you will see that they are going to take your 6/10 and they're going to turn it into 100ths. So they put their 100th at the bottom, which is going to be your denominator. That means you're going to take 10 times what to get 100? 10, so that's going to go here. So what do we have to do to the top? It's also going to multiply by 10, and that means I'm going to get 60. So that means we're going to do how many of these? 60, or 6 rows, because we know that each row is worth 10. And now you're going to have 60 100ths. So 6/10 is equivalent to 60 100ths. All right, look at the next way. They're going to put it into a place value chart. We're going to write the 6/10 now as a decimal. It is the same thing as 6/10 and how many hundredths? Look at what you just wrote above to help you out below. If it is 6/10, how many hundredths are you going to have? Hundredths alone would be 0. So am I going to have any ones? Nope, so this will be 0 here. Then my decimal point, then I need to move down. What's going to go in the tenths place? The 6. And what's going to go in the hundredths place? A 0. Now, do you remember when I talked to you about when we're doing tenths, we don't have to have the 0? Now we do, to make it equivalent. Because now you're looking at 60 hundredths. Yes? So, Daniel drank, let's put it in both forms. Our fraction first, so it's going to be 60 hundredths, written as a fraction. And then how am I going to write it the other way? Brad, what am I going to write here? There you go, 0.60, which is the decimal form of 60 hundredths. because your question said what? How many hundreds? It didn't want to know tenths. They gave it to you in tenths. You were changing it to hundreds. Okay, explain why 6/10 is equivalent to 60 hundredths. Think about what we discussed yesterday with knowing what the difference between 1 and tenths and hundredths was. Amy, can you explain to us how we are going to know that 6/10 is equivalent to 60 hundredths? So we know that there are 10 hundredths in a what? No, 10 hundredths in a, what did we talk about yesterday was larger? Tenths or hundredths? Tenths. So there's 10 hundredths in a tenth. Are you with me? So you got to think about that. We know that the number 100 is actually larger, but when you're discussing decimals, tenths are going to be larger. So you know that there are 10 hundredths in 1 tenth. So that means there are 60 hundredths in 6 tenths. Just like what Aiden told you, you're going to multiply by 10. This is kind of the same thing. 10 hundredths in 1 tenth. So there's 60 hundredths in 6 tenths. Before you turn, I want you to look at the math talk question. It says, explain how you can write 2 tenths as hundredths. So what's it going to be here? Cheyenne? Okay, what do I say that as? 20 hundredths. So she's saying you can write it like this. Is that the only way?
No.
No, what else can I do? Kinsey? 20 over 100 can also give you that. So that would be the answer to the math talk. Are you kind of figuring out what's going on here with tenths and hundredths? All right, flip the page. Here's another problem. Let's read it. Jasmine collected 30 hundredths liter of water in a jar during a rainstorm. How many tenths of a liter did she collect? So now we're changing from hundredths to tenths. And what is the number we're going to be using, Chase? How do I say it?
A decimal.
Yeah, it's a decimal. How do I read it? What is 0.30 say? How do I say it?
30 hundredths.
Thank you. So 30 hundredths is what we're going to be using to change it to. What's it asking of us? Tenths. We're changing it to tenths, right? So that's something we need to pay attention to. Now, our equivalent decimals are decimals that name the same amount. You can write 30 hundredths as a decimal that also names tenths. Okay, look at the first way. We're going to do the place value chart first this time. So we're going to write 30 hundredths as an equivalent decimal. So we're going to show the 30 hundredths in the place value chart. So we're just going to take this and move it down. So what do I have in the ones place? 0, decimal point, 3, 0. Now, because there are no hundredths, if I want to change this to tenths, all I have to do is do what? Take away the 0. So if I'm going to take the 30 hundredths and put it into tenths, I'm going to have how many tenths? How many tenths? Just 3. So that's all I'm writing in the first part. And then I'm going to write it as a decimal, so it will be 0, decimal point, 3. Nothing after it. Okay? following? Okay, let's try it another way. I'm going to write the 30 hundredths as a fraction, but this time it's going to have a denominator of 10. So we're going to write the 30 hundredths as a fraction. So how many hundredths is 0.30?
30.
30. And 30 hundredths written as a fraction is going to be 30 hundredths. But now I want to make it into a denominator of 10. So the opposite of what we did the last time is what? Dividing. So we're going to change it to 10. And so when we start with 100, we're going to have to divide to get that. So 100 divided by 10 is going to give you 10. So what I do on the bottom, I also have to do on the top. So 30 divided by 10 is going to give me 3. So Jasmine collected. Let's do the decimal point. So 0.3 or 3/10, which is the same thing. 0.3 is still saying 3/10, right? You just need to make sure you write it both ways. In the decimal point as well as the fraction. Okay. So as you can see, when it has a 0 in your hundredths and you're changing to tenths, what did you do with your 0? At the end, you took it away. Over here, you started with something like this, and what did you have to do to it to get it into hundredths?
Multiply.
You multiplied to get what? Adding a 0. So you can multiply one way, divide the other way, or think about the zeros. One of them I'm going to add the 0, one of them I'm going to do what to the 0? Take it away. Okay, a couple of ways to think about it. All right, let's talk about the share and show one at the bottom. You're going to write 4/10 as hundredths, and you're going to have to do it in 2 different things. Here you're going to do the multiplication, and here you're going to put it into a place value chart. Okay, with your partner, you're going to work on that one alone before we turn the page.